Have you ever heard of a town that doesn't show up on maps? A place so cursed, if you try to visit, you'll regret it with your life? Well, there's one. And if you're brave enough, I'll tell you the story of how it claims its victims. Tonight, we're diving into the mystery of Hollow's End, a town that's been abandoned for decades, but not for the reason you think. It's not a ghost town, no, it's something much darker than that. Locals will tell you stories, but they won't say much. You'll hear whispers about what really happened there, but no one has the courage to go back. Well, that is, until one unlucky man decided to take a trip and uncover the terrifying truth behind the curse of Hollow's End. And once you hear what happened to him, you'll never want to go anywhere near it. The problem with Hollow's End isn't just the stories. It's not just the fact that it's a ghost town that no one dares visit anymore. It's what happens when someone does decide to wander in. Because no matter how hard they try to leave, they never make it out. That's what happened to Ethan, a journalist from the city. He thought he could solve the mystery and make a name for himself, but what he found there was far beyond what he'd expected. Just wait, because what happened to Ethan is only the beginning. Ethan had been researching Hollow's End for months. The town was always on the outskirts of his mind, a place mentioned in hushed tones by those who live nearby. Some called it a curse, others called it bad luck, but no one really knew why people who went there were never seen again. Finally, after weeks of digging into old records and interviews, Ethan decided to take a trip himself. He packed his gear and headed toward the abandoned town, eager to get answers. When he arrived, he was greeted by nothing but silence. Hollow's End wasn't just abandoned, it felt empty, like the very air had been sucked out of it. The houses stood, decaying and abandoned, but not a single person in sight. Ethan wasn't deterred. He decided to set up camp in the old town square and begin his investigation. As night fell, strange things started happening. At first, it was just the odd sound of footsteps behind him. Faint, like someone was walking in his shadow. Ethan would spin around, but there was never anyone there. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just the wind or the occasional animal moving through the town. But as the hours passed, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, his breathing becoming shallow, and every time he glanced over his shoulder, the footsteps seemed closer. He decided to get some footage, hoping to catch something on camera that could explain the sounds. As he walked to the streets, filming the crumbling buildings and rusted cars, something caught his eye. A movement. He stopped, the camera capturing the edge of something just out of sight. It was quick, like a shadow darting around a corner. But when Ethan moved to investigate, the shadow was gone. The streets were empty again, as if nothing had ever moved. That's when the first real sign of trouble came. Ethan's camera started malfunctioning. The screen flickered, and for a split second, he saw something he couldn't explain. A face, pale and hollow, staring back at him from the screen. It wasn't a person. It wasn't even human. It was like a twisted reflection of something that shouldn't be in the world. Then the whispers started. Faint at first, but louder with each passing second. "Leave," the voice whispered, barely audible at first, but soon it became a chorus of voices, all speaking at once. "Leave! Leave! Leave now!" Ethan froze, heart pounding in his chest. The whispers surrounded him from all directions, as if the town itself was alive, breathing and calling for him. And then he saw it. In the distance, a figure. It was tall, impossibly tall, with arms that seemed to stretch far beyond what was normal. The thing stood still, watching him, and Ethan couldn't tear his eyes away. It was like a force beyond his control had him rooted to the spot. His legs wouldn't move. The air was thick with fear. Ethan tried to run, but as he turned, the streets had shifted. The buildings were no longer where they had been. The town layout completely changed. The way he had come in was gone, replaced by a maze of streets that didn't lead anywhere. Panic set in. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. He ran, not caring about anything but escaping. But with each step, the town seemed to grow darker and the shadows seemed to stretch farther than they should have. Finally, Ethan stumbled upon a house. It wasn't much, just a rotting structure at the edge of the town square, but it was the only thing in sight, and he thought it might offer some shelter. He ran inside, slamming the door behind him, hoping for a moment of respite. But as he caught his breath and started to calm down, something inside the house wasn't right. The air felt heavy, thick with something unnatural. Ethan's flashlight flickered, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. And then he heard it. The sound of footsteps, not from outside but from inside the house. Someone, or something, was walking around just out of sight. Ethan's pulse raced. He wasn't alone anymore. He turned around, and that's when he saw the worst thing imaginable. A figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing red in the darkness. The figure didn't move, but Ethan could feel it getting closer, its presence suffocating him. And then the whispers came again. This time, they were inside his head. "You should have left. It's too late now." Ethan's body was found 3 days later. His camera was still running, the last footage showing only static and the faintest trace of the red-eyed figure. No one could explain what happened to him, or why he hadn't made it out of Hollow's End. Some say he's still there, wandering the streets, lost in the cursed town. And some believe the town still waits, still hungry for more souls. No one knows what happened to Hollow's End, why it exists, or why it takes the lives of those who venture too close. But one thing's for sure. Once you find it, you might never leave. If you want to hear more stories that'll send chills down your spine, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell.